So just to illustrate how different our approach is, my solution for living longer is eat a cup of beans, live in a walkable neighborhood, make 3 friends who care about you on a bad day, and know your sense of purpose and live your sense of purpose. And
I love
I
that.
will say that yours is a lot sexier and a lot, more lean in interesting.
This is something that I do because I love it and I'm curious. And I would absolutely endorse your perspective. Maybe not on the beans, but
I almost got a bean endorsement out of Dave Asprey. How is this ready to end everything and go
if
home?
I do that, my 3 friends don't want to hang out with me. So having 1 to 3 really good friends where you can be vulnerable, it massively changes your vasopressin levels as a man, not just oxytocin. And this is important in your relationship. This is Adam Lane Grant's research. He's talking about attachment theory. So women need 3 friends where they can talk. Oxytocin goes up and they have energy to bring back to their relationship. And men need 3 friends where they can go do stuff and solve problems. And then they get their vasopressin to bring back energy to the relationship, which brings up relationships as another.
What was that word, vasopressin?
Yeah, vasopressin. It's a neurotransmitter that's involved in blood flow, but it's also involved in the happiness and energy pathways.
And that's what the social connectivity does for us. But for people out there listening who may not have your level of precision or access to resources or access to innovation, what would be the top 3 to 5 biohacks that you think are safest and deliver the most punch for the effort?
This actually makes me really happy because some people will say, biohacking is just for rich dudes. And number 1, 58% of biohackers are women. They always have been. Women are better biohackers than men.
That surprises me.
Women generally have more bodily awareness than men because for guys, if there's not a bone sticking out, we're probably fine. And so we're pretty far along, right?
Yeah.
So there's that inherent intuitive sense of interoception, it's called. And then you're asking about things, and other people say, it's only for wealthy people. But every one of my books has, here's the principle, here's the free version, here's the cheap version, and here's the crazy billionaire version that illustrates it works. So darkness is such an important nutrient. Everyone who's lived to 100 years old grew up with stars in the sky. They didn't have lights on at night because it just wasn't very common. And if they did, it was a dim light. It wasn't like this incredibly bright that we have now, to the point where you can see stars in most cities.
But I don't think of that as a biohack. But I guess it probably is.
It's a change in the environment around you, so you have control of your biology.
Yeah, I guess
and some people think like biohacking is rings and monitors and trackers and all this stuff. You don't have to do any of that. It's just that most of us don't have great bodily awareness. And so if you're waking up in the middle of the night, you might want to know when and where and why and how, and whether it's because of blood pressure or carbon dioxide. So you can fix the problem, because getting good sleep makes you feel better and be nicer and live longer. So I don't mind using tools to become more self-aware, but I don't want to be reliant on tools. So I would say darkness and sunlight are critically important, and they're free. The next one is, and heavily meditated, I wrote about it, it's called Bicep. But it's not the bicep with caffeine on it.
Check out the bicep. Can we get a close-up on that? I'm just seeing this massive, bulging carbon chain.
I got the molecular diagram of caffeine tattooed. And by the way, tattoos are not good for health. I did that because when I was 22, I made a t-shirt with that molecule on it. And it was the first product ever sold over the internet before e-commerce had a name.
And plus, in singles bars, you could say, "Do you want to see my caffeine molecule?" And and coincidentally, they get to see your giant bicep.
At singles bars, I actually tell them it's a Cialis molecule, and it seems to work better. All right, back to darkness and light and things like that. Bicep is brief, intentional, conscious exposure to pain. And in the old days, monks would flog themselves.
Yeah.
I'd ask my teachers, in 7th grade, why do they do that? Because they're such sinners. No. And then, well, why do yogis lay on beds of nails? Because they're proving they're good yogis. No. It turns out those, or taking a cold shower, which is the biohacker equivalent, or getting in an ice bath, doing something every day for 1 minute that hurts but doesn't cause harm, changes dopamine receptor sensitivity by up to 250%. And since dopamine motivates us to do things that matter, it takes less motivation.
I love this, actually.
Yeah, less willpower to be a good monk or to be a good dad or to be a good whatever you wanted to do. So this is, again, it's a free biohack. You could also eat a jalapeno or maybe get a good spanking if you're into that. It doesn't matter.
So it starts with the carbon chain, ends with the spanking. But well, I suppose a cold shower, a cold plunge might fall into that category.
Absolutely.
I think so many of the problems that we're suffering right now comes from too much comfort and too much convenience.
Amen.
We're never more than 5 steps away from some fatty, sweet, ultra processed food source. We constantly live at either air conditioned down to or heated up to 72 degrees. Instead of walking place, we spend about 3 times more time in our cars than we did in 1980s.
Yeah.
In blue zones, they're constantly exposed to a little bit of discomfort. They wake up, it's cold in the morning.
Yeah.
They walk out to their garden. They spend a couple hours hoeing. They have to cook their own food and endure a bit of hunger and do their work by hand, etc. We don't have any of that anymore.
And you know what's interesting? They didn't have a big exposure to natural EMFs or to artificial blue light, and they went outside for a couple hours a day. And they moved around because movement is really important for us. And in the West, we oftentimes think about exercise instead of just movement. And they're just different things. So structuring your life so you move regularly would be really good for you. And I can't say that I always do that because, well, sometimes I'm on podcasts for 8 hours or airplanes for a long period of time. So even if I don't have time to do that, I like to at least do a few squats. Or because this is what I do, I, of course, have AI exercise equipment that will give me cardio exercise in 15 minutes that works better than 5 hours of cardio.
Wow, what does that look like? So we're kind of moving on to number 3 here.
Yeah, you need to have
AI-assisted physical activity.
Yeah. This comes from Upgrade Labs, which is my AI longevity clinic set of centers. And what we have there is a piece of tech that monitors your heart rate, and an AI voice tells you, pedal slower. It's really boring. You pedal for 1 minute, like, and it goes, you're going to die. And then you pedal really hard, and the pedals just won't move. You do that for 20 seconds, 2 times. And that's all you do. And if you do that, it sends exactly the right signal into your body to tell yourself to improve metabolically. And people who do this 3 times a week experience a 12% VO2 max improvement, which is equal to 2 years of additional life in the correlation studies.
Amazing.
But if you did an hour a day of spin class with the lady in a leotard yelling at you, you only get 2% improvement. So we're getting 6 times more results in 15 minutes than 5 hours. And all I want to do is get the right signal into my body to say be young and healthy and strong and focused and intelligent, right? And give me the most freedom to do the things that matter in the world to me.
So the blue zone shepherd equivalent of that is the shepherd is out pasturing his sheep and the lamb runs away and he said, I can't lose that lamb. And all of a sudden he takes off running after it. So
it is 100% true. And we are so aligned, Dan. And I have great respect for your work and your perspectives.
Likewise.
I actually built a regenerative farm on Vancouver Island and raised my kids on it. So I recognize changing the environment around you. Well, having a farm and growing up in a forest is really a gift. And it was really hard on me travel-wise to get off that island. But for my children, it's the most powerful environment I could put them in. So we raised 25 sheep twice a year and 25 pigs and once 3 cows and a whole bunch of plants. And yeah, I've chased pigs and sheep and cows, and you're right, it is a lot of work. But they're also delicious. So.
What about pills? Are you a fan of supplements or superfoods or pharmaceuticals?
I've been trying to cut back. I do about 150 supplements a day.
Just 150?
Yeah, just 150.
And I'm guessing they're not all black beans.
And no, probably not. I don't even think I have a black bean extract in there.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us which ones you take and which ones you think other people, listeners, could take and not worry about it.
Yeah. The first disclosure here is, okay, I had a lot of autoimmunity as a kid and OCD and ODD and Asperger's and a wrecked gut from years of bacteria use. And I have a weird set of genetics that increases my risk of some things, my inflammatory profile and sticky blood and all sorts of crap. I'm someone who's willing to spend an unlimited amount of money and time to do this. And I've customized the stack with lab tests over years. So don't do what I do unless you personalize it for you, because I need 9 times more biotin than the average person. And I know that, so I take that. But here's the things that work for everyone as being most important. And they're not complex, sexy supplements. And I can talk about the sexy longevity stuff. But most of us are mineral deficient. And it's because our soil is broken, because we've been growing the same stuff in it or spraying glyphosate on it, so we don't get the minerals into the plants. And then we eat the plants and we think there's iron in it, but there's not. So taking a broad spectrum multi-mineral is important. And I make one called Minerals 101. And there are others on the market, but a well-formulated multi-mineral so that all the longevity systems in your body have the raw materials they need, whether it's vanadium or chromium or these other minerals we don't even think about. We also need vitamin D. And vitamin D is D-A-K-N-E. And the studies on vitamin D, actually all of these independently, there are a lot of studies. And the reason these are not sexy supplements, but if you look for the broadest effect across thousands of pathways in the body that your body needs support on, the fat-soluble vitamins drive the minerals. They tell the minerals where to go. Does this go in your bone? Does this go in your mitochondria? Does this go to make testosterone? So I consider these to be very simple, very affordable, and worthwhile baseline for longevity or just for feeling good. And because I do that, and I do my other supplements and things, I had to do surgery about 3.5 years ago on my foot. I had an old yoga injury and I didn't rehab it right. I was doing crow pose, kicking back to plank, and my toe joint got stubbed, and I have square joints, which is not good. They usually get arthritis as you get old. So it started to fuse, and just nothing I did worked on that. I kept trying things. So they had to cut the bone in my foot in half.
Ouch.
And I did it in Beverly Hills, and I was awake for the surgery.
It looked good, I bet.
Oh, it was a beautiful operating theater. So I'm laying there, and I can't feel my leg, and you hear the bone saw. It goes, bzzz, and the doctor looks at his nurse and says, "I'm having a hard time getting through the bone. Like, is this guy even human?" And afterwards he said, "Dave, I operated on someone half your age, and their bones cut like butter. Like, what are you doing? Adequate minerals? If you don't want to break your hip, take your vitamin D and your minerals, and not breaking your hip is a really good way to live till at least 100 without dying, because this is a major cause. You fall over. So those are low cost and relatively simple supplements. I take a handful of things that affect cognitive function. I take a handful of things that affect mitochondrial function. I take things that affect neurotransmitter creation, in my case, specifically dopamine and cortisol, because I know that genetically my body doesn't make enough cortisol no matter what I do. So I support that. And I do use pharmaceuticals for longevity. And I use very low doses of pharmaceuticals that can change in a way that we haven't found plant compounds that compete. As an example, I take a 5 milligram dose of Cialis every night. Cialis is, one of the ED meds.
Yeah, like Viagra. So.
Yeah. Viagra is a short-acting and Cialis is long-acting. But our goal is we want all of the blood vessels in the body to be more open.
Dilated, yeah.
And it works for 24 hours. So there's a very strong association of reduction of Alzheimer's disease when people are taking Cialis. And strangely, it's even dose-dependent. So you do 5 milligrams because it's going to lower your risk of getting Alzheimer's. And in my longevity work, there's kind of 4 things that are going to kill you. Diabetes, which is a precursor to cancer, and heart disease and Alzheimer's. So let's not get those would be step 1.
Mm-hmm.
What else do I take? What's the most controversial one? I take testosterone. I don't think that should be controversial. They just removed the black box warning for men and women for hormone replacement.
I didn't realize that for testosterone. I just got out of a menopause panel, and it was all the rage that now this hormone replacement therapy, mostly estrogen, but others for women in menopause is now we know it is not it does not cause breast cancer as we erroneously thought before, and it's actually a very effective treatment. So you're saying testosterone for men.
Yeah.
Which men should be taking testosterone?
If you're over 40,
which I, believe it or not, I am.
Yeah, I would have never imagined. You should get your levels tested, and the odds are exceptionally high that you're going to be low. And just a quick word for women. We've known for 20 years in longevity circles that bioidentical hormone replacement really affects longevity and quality of life in women. It reduces risk of all these things in different studies, but it was always, because of some bad data from 23 years ago, it was always sort of locked up in the FDA. Well, 4 days before we were recording this, I got to interview the commissioner of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, and we talked about this. And he just stood up and said, the data is very strong. It's very convincing. hormone replacement is going to improve the lives of at least 50 million women. So this is a longevity technique that we've been talking about really since the 80s.
50 million women. I think we should underscore that.
Yeah, it's so important. And it just breaks my heart because perimenopause tears marriages apart. I mean, it is a really rough time for women. It doesn't have to happen. Like, we know the levels.
Or severe. Yeah, I think it has to happen. But
you might go through perimenopause, but you're right. The severe, painful, and just disabling parts of it, it's easily treatable with hormones, but everyone thought those hormones caused cancer. They never did, and they don't.
And I mean, you're ripped. You're in good shape. We saw your biceps. So is some of this muscular bulging because of testosterone? Are you stronger now than you were?
Well, I don't know that I'm stronger. I'm probably as strong as I was when I was young, but when I was 26, my testosterone levels were lower than my mom's on lab tests. Because I was obese and because of environmental toxins and from mold toxins. So I may not actually know what it feels like to have the ideal testosterone levels for my body because I might have never had them. But no young man today has ideal levels because these bright lights mess with your testosterone indoors. Not getting enough protein, not getting enough saturated fat, not getting enough choline, not getting enough heavy exercise. All these things contribute, plus all the plastics and weird fragrances and all the stuff. So we have an epidemic where our 20-year-old men who should be ripped and lean without much work and seeking women all the time, they're not because they have the testosterone levels that their grandfathers had 30 years ago. So this is a species-wide, at least.
And that's because of the toxins in ultra-processed foods.
Toxins, lighting, lifestyle, stress. It's a recipe for disaster. It's not just one ingredient. And so we need to treat this because testosterone drives dopamine. And dopamine drives desire to make a difference in the world.
I mean, should we really be focusing on testosterone replacement when maybe we ought to be focusing on getting people to eat healthier, get exercise, get the right light exposure?
It's a really great point. And what I've found, and I've worked with a lot of people now, is that if someone's willing to really commit to this and they're exercising heavily only twice a week, they're going for a walk, they're doing everything right, but they have plastic carpet, they go to work, they're breathing all this stuff. Very few guys can get their free testosterone above 20, which is the level, according to Ben Beekman, who's a friend who's been on the show. That's where we want to be. And what happens to most men, they're working out, they know what works. And around 45, they go to the gym and they're working out harder than ever, but they're growing a pot belly and the workouts don't work anymore. That's testosterone turning off. So we just get their levels to that of a healthy 35-year-old. And very few people, maybe 1 in 20, can do this naturally if they're willing to put a lot of time and energy in. It's very hard right now.
95% of men middle-aged ought to be on testosterone.
And when they do it, oh my gosh, it's the brain effects. Like they want to take care of their family again. They're reignited in their career. Now their workouts work again. And there's a level of vibrancy that comes. You know the movie Grumpy Old Men?
Yeah, it filmed in Minnesota where I'm from. You know, it's
great movie, and it's a documentary on testosterone deficiency. That's men on low testosterone.
Well, Anne Margaret, I was quite a hit there. I think there maybe a little bit of lingering testosterone there. There you go,
right?
So, how about the diet of longevity? What's according to Dave Asprey? What should we be eating if we want to hit this 150-year-old mark?
All right, whatever it takes. And I am the first to say I would love to be a graveltarian. Actually, I wouldn't love it, but I would do it if I knew
very low cal.
Yeah, if just eating gravel would do it, I would force myself to eat gravel. Like I'm willing to do this stuff. I've been a vegan. I've been a raw vegan. I've been a vegetarian. I've done the Zone diet, the Atkins diet, and all sorts of other combinations of this and that and meal timing. And just in my quest to lose that 100 pounds of fat. And I lost 50 pounds in 3 months when I added more protein and cut some carbs and cut out gluten, which for me was a big trigger. The other 50 pounds took me 10 years to figure out how to lose. And that led to me writing the first big book on intermittent fasting and cyclical clean keto. And when I focused in on the research for longevity, there were kind of 2 spikes in protein consumption that had good evidence. One of them is 0.6 grams per pound of body weight, which is probably in alignment with a good number of recent longevity books, because there's a lot of data for that. And the reason that we recommend that is that raising a compound called mTOR, which you need to build muscles, and to repair tissues. But if it's always elevated, it can increase cancer risk. The theory is that raising mTOR too often would increase cancer risk, so therefore you don't want to do it. So if we minimize our animal protein and minimize our protein, then that would be protective. There's just one problem. Carbohydrates raise mTOR more than animal protein. So I did recommend that in my book, but I've tried the other spike, which is 1 gram per pound of body weight. And the reason that I look like I do is I have adequate but not high testosterone, and I get enough animal protein in my diet. If I didn't do animal protein, the plant-based protein research that I've seen, and I'm willing to be proven wrong, shows that these plant-based proteins are usually about 30% as effective for amino acid availability in the body.
All of this sounds right to me. I draw almost all my insight from looking at the populations that live the longest around the world. And we did a meta-analysis, 155 dietary surveys done in all 5 of these blue zones over time. And by the way, if you want to know what a 100-year-old ate to live to be 100, you have to know what she was eating as a little girl and middle age.
And was she breastfed?
Huge
variable, right?
Even that. And when you look over the past 100 years to what these cultures were eating and average it out, it was about a 65% carbohydrate diet. So the vast majority of their intake came from carbs, but both jelly beans and garbanzo beans are carbohydrates. So we're talking the garbanzo bean end of things, but also whole grains and tubers and, greens and garden vegetables of all sorts, and nuts and of course beans. But
were the Japanese really eating whole grains, or were they eating polished rice?
People confuse Okinawa with Japan. Okinawa was actually the Ryukyu's kingdom until 1918, where they were involuntarily assimilated into the Japanese nation. And it's really a different culture. It's about as different as Minnesotans are to Mexicans.
Start with an M. I mean,
but we're on the same continent, but we're not all the same people. So about 70% of all calories that Okinawans consumed until about 1975 or so came from purple sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes. Okay, got it. With all the polyphenols.
Polished rice was for rich people. And if you had rice in Okinawa, most of the time you were trading that. It was a commodity, and you needed the money. They did eat pork, by the way, but pork was a celebratory food, usually consumed around the Lunar New Year. They killed the family pig, and then they'd pig out, and they'd render the fat and make lard and versions of ham. So they had meat for a while, but only about 2% of their caloric intake came from animal products. And also, by the way, not a lot of fish. So I will admit, it's probably overly simplistic, but I do have 5 disparate populations who are eating largely a high carbohydrate diet. And actually, I hate the word carbohydrate because I believe the healthiest carbs and healthiest calories in our diet are complex carbs, and the least healthy calories in our diet are white sugar, carbohydrates. It's horrible. I think we both agree that sugar is a toxin, no matter what. Maybe not, but
it turns out if you get 4 or 5 grams of sugar as an electrolyte, it'll lower cortisol levels. So I want to be careful if we say it's toxic. I don't think sugar is good for you. Yeah. But small amounts of sugar can resuscitate mitochondria into stress. There's a case for them sometimes, post-workout, long exercise, etc.
Right, which we're going to get. And, you put a little bit of ketchup on your whatever, you're getting that 4 grams of sugar pretty quickly. Average American eats about 22 teaspoons of sugars.
It's insane.
Yeah, and at that level, it's for sure a negative. All this fine-tuning, well, in general, I salute it because medical innovation comes from your mind, your type of mind. I'm going to try this, see if it works. If it doesn't, I triage it, I go on to the next thing. The most important single innovation to add years of life expectancy in the last 100 years was penicillin.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody could foresee penicillin, but it was that investigative mind that discovered it. And all of a sudden, until penicillin was discovered, if you stepped on a nail and got it, you died, or had an abscessed tooth, you died, and now, boom, all this comes along, and it's your mind, it's your longevity hacking sort of process that gives us these big leaps.
You know what's crazy? They used AI just within the last 3 months with some new molecular modeling capabilities, and they discovered 400,000 new unexplored antibiotics.
Wow. Let's try those one by one.
If they can do that, can we just add 10 years to the human life? There's so much good stuff happening, more than any human can even track right now, that I'm hopeful. And I'm also, I see life as this system. And you go back to Okinawa, all right. So someone's born. They're likely born vaginally, and they picked up the microbiome from their mom, right? Which is a necessary part of building your gut bacteria. So there weren't a lot of C-sections back then, right? And we didn't overly clean our infants. So they started out with the right inoculation, and they played in the soil. And then studies have shown that in other parts of Japan, there's a special species of gut bacteria that preferentially digests seaweed. So unless you're married to someone from that part of the world and you mix your microbiomes up and you inherit that and you eat a Japanese diet, it's almost like Mother Nature has conspired to set up all the microbes and all the plants and all the animals in the angle of the sunshine and the temperatures, and then to select these mitochondria that are going to thrive as part of this beautiful system and that we're not really separate from. And what I'm recognizing is I'm 28% Basque, and I've got some Northern Europeans with random stuff. I think the Basque part of me likes ribeye, which is the native Basque food. I have no idea, but I don't have the right microbiome for my random genetics, and I don't live in the right environment for my genetics. And it feels like a lot of what I'm really doing with biohacking is I'm saying, how do we set the environment up so that it's most harmonious with our body, so that it's not about forcing the body to do something. It's about signaling the body, hey, you're in the right place, which drops stress, and it causes systems to work better. But we're all so genetically different. And we've messed with our gut bacteria and our soil biome that it's really hard to know what to do. So I do my best to replace what we've already taken out of nature. And that by doing that, that is improving the markers of how you feel, how you're aging, and how you look, and just quality of life. I would prefer to just go outside my cave, spear a bunny or something and, eat it.
Vegans will love that one.
Sorry, vegans.
What is Dave Asprey eating a day?
Bunnies. And salamanders. No, I make sure that I get 1 gram per pound of body weight of animal protein. So about 200 grams of
So what's
protein.
Breakfast? Nuts and bolts.
I usually don't eat breakfast.
Okay.
But if I did, it would be some sort of protein, probably sheep's milk yogurt. I prefer sheep's milk because it's A2. It's got more protein. It's got more of the types of fats that you want. And I'm not allergic to it like I am cow's milk.
Yeah,
so,
easier to digest.
Yeah, it's much more compatible with humans.
By the way, that's big in Sardinia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And fermented sheep's milk, like Manchego cheese. I eat a lot of that because it's a good source of saturated fats. I target, I know this may drive you nuts, 50% of my fat calories at a minimum coming from saturated fats and the rest from monounsaturated. So I like some olive oil, but not too much, because studies show that about 2 ounces of olive oil is good for longevity, good for cognitive function. I minimize my seed oils, but I do eat things like avocados and some nuts. But if you eat really large amounts of olive oil, it increases an enzyme called D5D and D6D. And those cause a lot of oxidation of the omega-6 in your cell membranes, about 5 times more. So just because olive oil is...
It's also a ton of calories that people don't realize.
Exactly.
Yeah, a tablespoon of olive oil has about 120 calories in it. So you're loading up on calories you don't need. What's for lunch? What do you... That sounds like maybe your bigger meal.
Ideally, your biggest meal would be between 12 and 2 p.m. to match when the sun is at the height of the sky.
That tracks with blue zones too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I actually am a huge admirer of you and your work. There are people listening going, I can't believe they're talking.
Yeah, which is why people are going to watch.
And, it's so fun to have friends who believe something different than you.
Yeah.
And we have this weird stuff where, if that person says something I don't like, I have to hate them. And I don't do that. I think you have a fantastic heart, and you've been researching in longevity, I think, for a little longer than I have. And you're a true believer. How do we do this right? So
yeah, likewise.
You're an intellectual mind I greatly respect. So we reached that that middle of the curve, it makes sense. For me, it's a signaling thing. And for you, that's what they've always done. And it seems to work best. And like, oh, great, we align.
Yeah.
So what did I have for lunch today? I had 16 ounces of ribeye. And I put extra sea salt on it for the minerals. I do think we have an epidemic of salt deficiency right now. And
boy, it flies right in the face of what health experts been telling us.
Doesn't it? Well, then again, those same health experts for the last 23 years told us that hormone replacement was bad for women.
Good, touche.
Even though the evidence.
Touche.
Here's why I say this. Way back when I was running that longevity nonprofit, the first time I ever gave my own talk instead of moderating experts, it was on salt. And I went really deep. I still have the PowerPoint somewhere. And after that, Gary Taubes wrote a book about salt that was very well researched as well. And there's a guy named Michael Haynes, who was the president of the American Hypertension Society. So, guy who studies high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And he said, all the data for salt consumption is just based on people, like, how much salt did you have yesterday? It's not measured. So he measured urinary output of sodium in 3,000 people for 3 years. So he actually got the data. And a direct summary in his words of his work: if you want to live longer, eat more salt.
There's got to be a limit to that.
Of course, the limit's usually about 6 or 8 grams, which is what I do. And it's changed my life.
To people listening, you have to be careful because, there's the dietary guidelines will warn us against too much salt and its association with hypertension. We're hearing the opposite from you. But
sure. So the current recommendations are around 2.1 grams. And it's weird.
So how much is that? That's like a tablespoon or?
I think it's less than that.
Okay.
But it turns out sea salt isn't actually sodium. So there's NaCl. So you basically, there's an adjustment. If you go to ChatGPT, they'll tell you this much salt has this much sodium in it. But they never told you per pound of body weight, did they? So it would make no sense that a guy as tall as you or me should have the exact same amount of salt as someone who's 5 feet tall. But
true.
So what does salt deficiency do? It lowers the body's ability to get water inside of cells because of something called an osmolarity gradient. So that's a problem. But even worse, there's an enzyme called renin. And when sodium is low, renin goes up. And a very slight rise in renin increases cardiovascular risk even by about 25%. So the current 2.1 gram recommendation from the government raises cardiovascular risk. And people say, what about high blood pressure? Sodium affects your blood pressure within the error margin of a blood pressure cuff. It is nominal for all but a very small percentage of people who are salt-sensitive hypertensives. Those people usually need more potassium. So what we have is the government shouldn't be telling us how to be healthy. Have you ever seen a healthy politician? It's not their job.
But you think of like Cheerios has more salt than potato chips, and soups are chock full. They have nearly 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Our diet is so laced with sodium already. It just seems surprising that we would think about adding more sodium or more salt.
The data is incredibly strong on this. And you look at Cheerios. Cheerios are labeled as a heart-healthy food, but we know that raising insulin is really bad for heart health, and Cheerios spike insulin like no one's business because they're ultra-processed carbs. I was very surprised by this, and I actually was focusing on making sure I had more potassium than sodium, and I've limited my sodium. And when I got my sodium levels up to be appropriate for someone of my size and my height, and for my stress level, stressed animals need more sodium. And as a farmer, we put salt licks out for our animals because it's so bad for them. No, it's because they die without it. Elephants travel thousands of miles to the salt caves to get their sodium. So it's a necessary nutrient that we don't want to demonize. You don't want to overdo it. And I teach people, look at your ratio of sodium to potassium. If you're getting enough potassium, you can have more sodium and you'll actually have better cell hydration. And at Upgrade Labs, whenever someone comes in, we use a $26,000 machine that measures cell hydration among many other things. And what we find universally is that half our people come in and they say, I drink huge amounts of water every day, but their cells are dehydrated. And we say, well, put some salt in the water. And then they drink the water and their cells become hydrated again. So it's weird that you can drink water and it won't go into your cells. It's because cells are made out of like seawater. There's salt water inside them. Yeah. And if there's water outside and the body doesn't have any salt out here, the new water can't get into the cells. So they just hold on to it.
How about dinner? Huge ribeye for lunch. What's dinner?
Dinner is likely to be another huge ribeye or maybe a piece of lamb or a piece of fish.
So you don't eat any vegetables
No, I
at
eat
all?
vegetables. There's going to be some kind of vegetable. Arugula is my favorite. I eat a lot of arugula. I'll eat some broccoli. I'm not anti-vegetable, but I choose vegetables that are lower in oxalate. So I don't do spinach. I do arugula instead. It has more polyphenols. It's just nutritionally superior. And then I'll usually put some pili nuts or macadamia nuts on it. I put some olive oil. I might put Manchego cheese. I might have some fruit. And I might have some white rice.
And how about, what does Dave Asprey do if he wants to blow it out? If he wants to, like, I love eating this food, I'm going to eat it, darn it.
Well, I'm about to go to Dubai, actually tonight. And American wheat is hard red wheat. It's a certain species that's harder on the gut. And it's polluted with glyphosate and bromine and a bunch of other stuff. So if I get even a little bit of wheat here, it wrecks my gut. I get pimples. My brain gets foggy. I can eat European wheat reasonably well, unless they smuggled American wheat into Italy like they're doing. So when I'm in Dubai, my goal is to treat my baklava deficiency.
Oh, yum.
I'm going to have a pound of baklava every day for 5 days. I'm going to take some pharmaceuticals to keep my blood sugar under control. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. And I'm not going to regret it even a little bit.
So if you like that clip, there's a lot more where that came from. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.